is A-Force Guru, which has gone live today. So I'm going to start by just talking a little bit about my background and my history, and then I'm going to tell you about the company's history. First, A Cloud Guru, and technically A-Force Guru starts today, so there's not a lot of history to tell you. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of cloud computing, where we've come from, where we're going to, and then what serverless is and how serverless is enabling our business. And then we're going to talk about the advantages of serverless, the disadvantages, and then how you can learn more about serverless and serverless architectures. So about me, I'm an AWS community hero and an Alexa champion. I have to be really careful when saying Alexa because it can trigger her. In fact, I will just put her on silent mode for now. So my story is, I didn't actually start out in tech. I only got into tech in basically 2009. So I'm from Australia originally. I emigrated to the UK in 2004. In Australia, I did a degree in accounting and finance. As soon as I finished uni, I moved to the UK, and I started work at Prudential as I was a cost allocation analyst. So it was, basically an accountant. And I did a graduate diploma in immigration law while I was in Australia. And I started, I put an advert in the Sun newspaper, actually. It cost £5,000, and to me that was like a huge amount of money back then. I was only earning like £18,000 a year. So I put it on a credit card, and we took an advert out in the Sun asking people if they wanted to emigrate to Australia to, email us, contact us, and built a business off the back of that. So I soon figured out I could make a lot more money helping people emigrate to Australia than I could working for Prudential. So I did that in, that must have been about 2006 when we first started, 2005, 2006. We built that out to a company of 150 people all around the world. It was really, really successful. And then the credit crunch came, and with the credit crunch, the problem is that nobody can get mortgages. And because nobody can get mortgages, nobody can buy or sell houses, which means it's very hard to emigrate. And at the same time, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they changed all the immigration laws to make it much harder. They became much more sort of protectionist during that time to, stop people coming in. And so suddenly overnight, our business just, collapsed. That was it. And during that time, I'd been learning about tech. Like I had learned how to program PHP and use MySQL because I needed to learn how to do that to build our website and to capture people's details. So I started sort of slowly getting into tech. And the problem was at the end of the end of the credit crunch, I was very highly qualified and highly skilled, but it was in an industry that almost got decimated. 90% of our competitors had been wiped out. There was no jobs going. And so I suddenly found myself in 2009 very highly qualified in an industry that didn't exist anymore. So I ended up going back to night school, and I decided I really wanted to get into tech. So I did my Microsoft certifications, so my MCSE. I did the Cisco certifications, CCNA, and I got a job at St. Mungo's homeless charity. And then at St. Mungo's, I was teaching both the staff and the homeless people how to, connect up to email. So I became a very patient sort of teacher in that process. And then once I got both my certifications, I managed to get a job at Rackspace first as a Windows system administrator. And I was running like PHP and MySQL workloads on Windows, which was interesting. And then I got promoted to solutions architect, and this was right at the beginning of cloud. So this is or public cloud. So this was about the beginning of 2009, end of 2009, beginning 2010, and it was really exciting. Cloud was really taking off, and it was just really, really good. So I was there for 2 years, and then I moved over to a company called Phoenix. So at Rackspace, my deal sizes were about 4 servers, so 2 web servers, 2 database servers. It wasn't very interesting. I moved to a company called Phoenix, and I was doing 20 server solutions. That became more interesting. And then I moved to a company called SunGuard Availability Systems, and those deal sizes were 100 servers minimum, and you'd only work with one customer over a 3-month period. So you really, went deep dive into it. And it wasn't just tech anymore. It wasn't just cloud computing. It was like putting in MPLS circuits. So there was all the physical, cables and stuff. But there was also disaster recovery. So what happens if an office burns down? Where do the staff go? They go to a workplace recovery center. And how do you recover desktop computers to another place? And I started getting, it was very interesting stuff, but the problem was I was watching what Amazon were doing in the cloud computing space, and they started making infrastructure as code. So things like Elastic Beanstalk were coming out, or CloudFormation. And it started to stress me because I started thinking, I'm a heavily invested infrastructure architect right now, like I'm a really good infrastructure architect, but everything is about to change. Amazon are pulling the rug out from everyone's feet. I'm going to be in exactly the same situation from when I was this immigration lawyer, very highly skilled, but almost no demand for my skills anymore. So I became obsessed with AWS and decided I wanted to learn it. So I interviewed for a solutions architect role at Amazon. And at the time, SunGard had a spending freeze on training. So if you wanted to do AWS training, you had to pay for it yourself. And the training, was delivered by certain companies. I won't mention their name, but it's like £1,500 to £2,000 per cert. There's 5 certifications for Amazon, or there was back then. So you're paying up to £10,000 to get AWS certified, which is the equivalent of first year's worth of semester at uni. So I thought that there has to be a better way. There was some online training, but it wasn't all that good. And I was always used a company called Udemy to learn about tech. So I'd been really invested in Udemy as a student. And so I went for this job. I didn't get it, and I was devastated. It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because then I thought to myself, well, if I'm not going to work for Amazon, I'll just release courses on Udemy and teach it. And actually what I wanted to do was teach people how to do their own visas to go to Australia on Udemy, but I had been out of immigration for 4 years, so I thought I'd just teach Amazon Web Services and see how that went. And so we released our first course on the 9th of January 2015 on Udemy, and I gave away about 100 free copies on Reddit, and it just started getting really viral. And I suddenly realized that I could actually make money out of this. So first the course was just free, but then I started charging, I think like $29 or $25 or something for it. And it started to really take off. And so that's the start of A Cloud Guru. And I guess I should talk a little bit about the problem with Udemy is you revenue share with them 50% to 75%. And they do these $10 deals all the time. So if I'm teaching Amazon Web Services for $10, some of the time I only get $2.50 out of that. Maybe I'll get $5. And it was making good money, but I could see that there was and the other problem with Udemy is that it has courses on everything, from My Little Pony to photography to massage to, AWS. And I really wanted to build a dedicated platform that just targeted AWS to begin with, but then moved out into cloud computing, was more sort of agnostic. So I talked to my brother, and my brother's a software engineer. He actually worked at Microsoft. He wrote Windows Defrag for Windows 7, so he's a really clever guy. And I said, let's build our own platform. And so Sam took off 3 weeks in August. It actually turned out to be 4 weeks. So he has 4 kids. His wife is Tasmanian, so they all went down to Tasmania. The in-laws looked after the kids, and Sam just locked himself away in a dark room for 4 weeks. And he built out our platform, and we launched A Cloud Guru on the 1st of September in 2015. So we're not even 2 years old yet as a company. We were just hitting 18 months from when we first got incorporated. So in terms of the founders, so you've obviously heard about me. I've sort of mentioned my brother Sam. So he's ex-Microsoft. He was working at a place called Kiandra IT. That's where he met Pete, who's our CTO. And Sam and Pete are the authors of a book called Serverless Architectures on AWS, which is a Manning bestseller right now. And then actually, as A Cloud Guru started becoming more and more successful, we started sponsoring the meetups. So we sponsored the AWS London meetup, and that's where I met Francis. And it was, I don't know, it must have been almost this time last year. So there's Francis, and Francis obviously runs the Salesforce meetups. And so we got talking. And the thing about every time I do an Amazon Web Services exam, you've got to go in there and you've got to sign the health and safety register. So you've got to put your name, the date, the time, what exam that you're sitting. And I noticed for every single Amazon Web Services one, there must have been 5 or 10 Salesforce certs. And so I thought the market for Salesforce must be huge, and they seem to have the same kind of challenges in that most of the Salesforce training is delivered in person. There is online training, but it doesn't seem to be all that good. And the online training that is available is not certification focused. It's more general, how to use Salesforce. So Francis and I got talking, and we decided to take what the software that we'd written for A Cloud Guru and to launch out a separate platform just for Salesforce to build up an online community of learners for Salesforce. So I'm just going to tell everyone right now, I don't have the first clue about Salesforce. I used to use it as a solutions architect where I'd put like in my opportunities that I was working on and stuff. But Salesforce is completely, or A4 Guru is being completely driven by Francis, so he's going to be the face of it. We just support him in the underlying technology. So the problem that we're trying to solve in the Amazon Web Services space is that, and this is a survey that was done by RightScale, the biggest challenge to cloud adoption now is no longer security, it's finding the skilled people in which to take you on that journey. And that's really the problem that we as a startup are trying to solve. We're trying to get as many people skilled in cloud computing as cheap as possible and in as big a volume as possible. So this is our platform. This is A Cloud Guru. A4 Guru looks very similar in terms of the UI. We've got a UXer who's just starting next week, I think, in California. So it is going to get an even nicer sort of makeover. So we've trained 170,000 engineers in Amazon Web Services across 125 countries. We've actually trained more, and Amazon have told us this, we've trained more people in AWS than Amazon themselves have done so far. Because right now Amazon is still doing in-classroom training. They're moving to video-based training. But this is another challenge with Amazon, is that they release so many new products. There's over 1,000 new products was released in products and services in 2016. And for their own online training, 3 departments have to approve it. It has to be approved by the product department, it has to be approved by the marketing department, and then it has to be approved by the legal department. And they're just not agile. They're really struggling just to keep up, with the rate at which they're innovating. So a startup like us, that's where we can really make a difference because we're very agile. I don't have to run it by legal and marketing to put a video up. I just normally put it up, and then, sometimes I've stopped swearing in the videos when something goes wrong because I've been burnt too many times. But yeah, we just put it up and we wait for student feedback and then we update it. And we've managed to train these 170,000 engineers without running a single server. So we don't have any virtual machines, we don't have any physical servers, we don't have any sysadmins. Literally, we run the whole thing off a whole bunch of different microservices. So I've sort of just covered this off, but so first course was published on the 9th of January, incorporated as a company on the 20th of May 2015. We launched our serverless LMS on September 1st. We do believe it is the first serverless LMS. I don't even know if there is any others out there yet. We founded a conference in Serverless Conference, which we did 3 of last year. So we did one in Brooklyn, we did one in Tokyo, and we did one in New York. And again, this is how I sort of became very good friends with Francis as well, because I'd never run a conference before. I'd been working in tech and before that law. So and for some reason we decided to do our first conference in the US, which was its own headache because you don't know anyone on the ground, you're trying to do it all remotely. We lost a lot of money on the first conference. Second conference, we broke even. In London, we only made a small profit. But for us, the conferences aren't about making money. It's about evangelizing serverless, because we're very passionate about serverless architectures, which I will come on to now. Our next conference is in Austin, Texas, by the way, at the end of April. And we're going to have a London conference here probably in October, November, either here at CodeNode or at et cetera venues. So what is serverless? I keep talking about serverless, but I'm not really describing it. So we'll talk a little bit about the brief history of cloud. I'll try and do this like in 2 minutes. So originally what would happen is you'd have everything on-premise, and then you would get these data center providers like Rackspace, who burst onto the scene, or Equinix or Level 3, where you can actually just take your physical servers and you can host it with them, and they worry about managing the data centers, they worry about the electricity, the networking, all of that. You can just sit in your chair and remote desktop or SSH into your servers. So that was great. You were able to move that level out to someone else. Then we had infrastructure as a service, and Amazon launched EC2. Now, with data centers, and like when I worked at Rackspace, to provision a new server would take between 5 to 10 days if it was a physical server. When I worked at SunGard, it would be 30 days. When Amazon launched EC2, you could do it through an API call, so you could provision virtual servers in minutes, and it was great. It was a revolution. Then we moved into platform as a service. So this is Azure, very good. Obviously, Salesforce, platform as a service. And Amazon released Elastic Beanstalk. And then we moved to another level of abstraction, which is containers, so things like Docker. But the problem is with all of this is you're still having to manage an operating system. You're still having to look after operating systems and even container management. You have to worry about scaling. So what is serverless? Well, basically, serverless takes everything you see here from the data center all the way up to the containers, and somebody else manages that for you. Amazon manage that for you. All you have to worry about with serverless technology is your code. You don't have to worry about auto-scaling. You don't have to worry about your peak demands. And this, as a solutions architect, used to always worry me. Our biggest demand for A Cloud Guru is on Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and normally the 1st and 2nd of January when everyone's made their New Year's resolutions and they want to get certified. Before, we'd have to worry about auto-scaling. How many web servers are we going to have in that environment in order to meet demand? But because the way with serverless, you don't have to worry about that at all. You can do Lambda. You can upload functions into Lambda, and they trigger when an event makes Lambda trigger, and it automatically scales. So these functions can run basically independent of each other. So you can have one function for when somebody's checking out, for example, when they're trying to make a purchase. And you can have 1 million people hitting the website at once doing that, trying to make that purchase, and that function has been scaled out automatically across all the different servers. So you don't have any downtime, or very little downtime. So yeah, what is serverless? Well, it's where the vendor takes care of provisioning and managing the servers, and they're responsible for capacity provisioning and automated scaling. And you're basically moving away from servers and infrastructure concerns should be everyone's goal. And I'll come to that, why that is in a second. So what are the benefits of serverless? Well, really rapid time to market. We're able to build out our own learning management system in 4 weeks. So we're able to build that from scratch because we didn't have to worry about using things like Moodle and Joomla and scaling that out. It scales effortlessly. So like I said, I don't worry about the 1st of January or Black Friday or Cyber Monday. Our website just takes the load, and we don't have any sysadmins that we have to have up late at night watching it. And then it's a disruptive cost model, and this is the most important thing about serverless. So Lambda charges you per invocation. So every time you invoke a function, you reach a certain charge, but it is ridiculously cheap. And in fact, your first 1 million invocations are free. So if you're not doing anything more than 1 million invocations for a month, then you get Lambda for free. And we still run on free tier in Lambda, and it's just amazing. We don't pay anything for our Lambda, whereas normally, if we were paying for EC2 or for physical servers, we'd be paying £20,000 to £30,000 a month. So it is really, really disruptive in terms of cost. And what made serverless possible is Lambda itself. So Lambda is to compute what S3 did to storage. So this is an architecture of our platform. So we run AngularJS across all our devices. We then use things like Auth0 for our authentication. We use S3 for where we're storing our video files. We use AWS API Gateway, which backs off onto different Lambda functions. So we have discrete functions for everything that you do on the site. So if you create a discussion forum, for example, that's one function. If you upvote a discussion forum, that's another function. If you reply, that's another function. And then we use Firebase for our database. We don't actually use DynamoDB, so Firebase is a Google-owned product. And we use PayPal and Stripe for our credit cards. We use Intercom to talk to our customers. And then we use Campaign Monitor to do our sales and stuff, to email our customers. So we're able to do all this without running a single server. And this is how we encode media. Just keep an eye on the time. So I've got 5 minutes. I'll be quick. So this is Pete. He can upload a file. That goes to S3, which will trigger a Lambda function, which sends it to Elastic Transcoder. We then encode that video file for all different types of devices, so for iPads, iPhones, laptops, etc. Those encoded videos are then stored in another S3 bucket. That triggers an SNS function. which then basically fans out and runs a whole bunch of different other Lambda functions. So one Lambda function will take the data around that video, so what's the file name, what's the name of the lecture, and that's all stored into Firebase. We actually back off copies of our videos to another region just for redundancy. I have no idea what this function is, but I'm sure it's important. So the benefits of serverless is that we've had in January we had 350,000 unique sessions, 50,000 concurrent sessions at our peak, which was the 2nd of January, I believe. We had a big sale on, New Year's Day sale. It scales automatically, and I keep coming back to this disruptive cost model, but it literally for 12, let's say it's a 12-hour course, we have here a 30-hour course, it's probably more accurate. If somebody watches a 30-hour course from start to finish, our total infrastructure cost is 10 cents. And if you think about that, they've already paid us the money to watch that course. So we're only incurring a cost after we've taken money from a customer. And if you look at our competitors like lynda.com or Pluralsight or you name it, they're Udemy, for example, they've got dedicated data centers, so they have to keep these data centers up and running, and they have much higher costs than we do. Because we've built this all on AWS and Lambda, we're extremely disruptive. Nobody can get the courses down to what we can without re-engineering their entire platform. And we have no system administrators, we have no data centers, and we have very little downtime. But that is a disadvantage of serverless, that when there's downtime, there's very little things you can do. So our downtime was, DynamoDB went down on the East Coast it was just before reInvent 2015. So we had a little bit of downtime then, but it was still quite a new platform then. And then we had issues with Lambda again on the East Coast sometime last year. AWS is fairly reliable, and yeah, okay, no worries. Our biggest cause of downtime now is with Auth0, so people can't authenticate to sign into our platform. But, the other issue is latency can be a problem because we're across multiple clouds. We're on AWS, we're on GCP, we're using Auth0, we're using Stripe. If you don't architect it correctly, the site can run really slow. We're getting better at that, but we're going through a learning process. And the other disadvantage of serverless is it's so new, it's really, really hard to get started. So this is a ServerlessConf that we're running in Austin. Like I said, we did one in Brooklyn, one in Tokyo, and one in London last year. So Serverless Austin is coming up. We've got some great speakers. I think we can talk. Well, Tim Wagner's going to talk at Austin, but we might have a very big keynote. Unfortunately, we're still negotiating and under NDA, but it's someone very, very famous who hopefully will be there. And it's great thing about serverless is it's vendor agnostic. So Amazon are there, Microsoft are there, Google are there, IBM are there, etc. And so if you want to learn more about serverless, just check out our website, serverlessconf.io. Come to our ServerlessConf in London. We've got the book. I don't get commission on the book, so go out and buy it or not. And then we do run workshops. So we run workshops in Europe. We run workshops in North America. And I'll show you the different workshops that we run. So we have a build your own video sharing website with Lambda, API gateway and Firebase, build a chatbot using Lambda and serverless framework. We have event-driven security with AWS Lambda, and then we also have introduction to Alexa development. And the thing about the best way to visualize Lambda is when you talk to Alexa, that is Lambda talking back to you. So you say something like, Alexa, what's the weather like today in London?
In London, it's 37 degrees with rain. Today, you can look for snowy, rainy 7 degrees and a low of 30 degrees.
So that is Lambda. You are literally talking to Lambda, and that's what I find the best way to, to visualize serverless and to almost anthropomorphize it is whenever you're talking to Alexa, you're just talking to Lambda, and Lambda is talking back to you. So that's it. I know I've sort of focused mostly on A Cloud Guru. One last thing I will say with A-Force Guru. So what we do is we revenue share with our instructors. So our top instructors right now on A Cloud Guru are earning about $50,000 a month, which is amazing. And we're at 170,000 engineers. We want to get to be at the same with A-Force Guru. But today is literally the first day it has gone live, the platform. So we're always looking for instructors. So if you want to make money in your spare time or make money while you sleep and you want to record courses for us, just reach out to Francis or Cash, who's our content director in the audience. So and yeah, that's it. Does anyone have any questions? I'll go grab the mic.
I can do it.
You got it? Okay. Any questions? No.
Speechless.
Sorry? Speechless? Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, well, great. Thank you very much, everyone. It's a pleasure.